Welcome to Career Oyster Podcast. I'm Howard Caddy, founder and head coach of Career Oyster. And in these podcast series, we're talking to owners and executives of recruiting firms, executive search firms, and staffing firms to try to see what is the future looking like in the next several years. And we'd like to gain their expertise about potential changes in the marketplace and the economy caused by AI and other factors, as well as how does that affect candidates and hiring managers. My guest today is Berta. He's a partner at Laureal Group, an executive search firm in Seattle, Washington, and he's working in the technology space. Thanks for joining me today, Chris. Welcome to the podcast.
Howard, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
First of all, why don't you introduce yourself and your firm a little bit and tell us some specifics about what you do, etc.
The Laureal Group, we're an executive boutique recruiting firm. We've been in the technology space for going on 23 years now. The partners all have north of 20 years of recruiting experience ourselves. And we've been at the forefront of many of the technology evolutions really from the beginning. So if you think about SaaS, when that came into existence, we were educating clients on what that looked like. Then you had the cloud computing and cloud capabilities. And it also was the foundation of a lot of cloud entities like Microsoft and AWS. It rose to prominence that way. And now we have AI. And so we end up seeing a lot of any company that has .ai in their name seems to get tremendous funding that includes an extra zero to the funding amount compared to before. So we've been at the forefront of a lot of these different technology evolutions and helped advise companies, help staff companies at the leadership level as they look to explore and get into these areas more deeply. We actually, as the executive, have placed some senior leaders at these companies and then had requirements or asks to build out different capabilities within their organization. And we ended up building out consulting practices to support a lot of the needs that they had. And so we've ended up selling those entities to private equity firms ourselves. And so we've had both the through line has always been our executive connections and our network within the executive level, but have filled out other parts of those companies' organizations as their needs have transformed. And we've ended up being, I think, a strong partner for a lot of these companies as they've looked to expand within these different technical capabilities.
Yeah, you mentioned in our previous conversation that a lot of them were startups and growth companies, right?
Yeah.
And so you help build them up and then staff them, et cetera. So you might even go down to product managers or other things?
Yeah, and so oftentimes we'll end up starting with a product manager and then hire a chief product officer, for example. And then they may say, hey, you know what, we have a need for, in one case, it was a discipline called DevOps, so developer and operations. And so at the time, there just wasn't that many people who had that DevOps combination experience. And so we decided to build out a consulting practice focusing on DevOps. And so had close to 100 consultants on different client sites over the years, over that time frame, and then ended up selling that practice to a private equity firm. This is going to be a need that we're seeing in our organization. Can you help us staff for this? And we're saying there aren't that many full-time employees that have this kind of capability. We'll build out a consulting practice and then train some of these people to have that kind of skill, and then ended up placing them on location at different clients.
Now that sounds interesting, and so that does differentiate you slightly from a lot of other search firms that'll just do the search. And the fact that you were hiring people that didn't have a lot of that background implied that you had to help train them and get them up to speed. Tell me a little bit more about examples of that.
Yeah, so I think the differentiator is that we partner with our clients in that we try to solve for problems that they are voicing. It's not transactional. It's really how can we really help improve your business? Because we recognize if we can improve their business, there's going to be more business for all of us to take on and work on. And so in this case, yes, the chief product officer said, hey, can you work with our engineering team? Because have this need and there's a gap here. And so then we ended up saying, okay, there really aren't that skill set in the marketplace. Let's try to find people who have that aptitude, have that capability. Maybe they were developers and want to get into more operations, or maybe they were more on the operation side and need to get. And so we ended up hiring a person to run the training practice so that they could hire consultants who had that aptitude and then train them on those capabilities and go through a boot camp and get them up and running so that then when we put them on site that they would be capable of having that skill set of that combination of developer and operations.
It seems like whenever there's a new technology coming around, we have this issue, right? So from a job search point of view, they have to say, I don't have that experience unless they get it somehow. So now with AI coming, we have the same situation in spades, right? That it's going to change what people have to do, the transitions and what has to be made. Tell me a little bit about how you view your services in helping executives transition, who may be even in a slightly different industry or an older technology or whatever. How do they be competitive in the new world?
Gen AI has really altered, I think, a lot of conceptions around. It's not just a new technology, but it's a new way of thinking. And so it's not just learning new skills, it's learning new ways to think and how to address different items. And if you're talking about at the executive level, what are the things you talk to different people, and it's really, we're right in that stage of exploring. I don't think people truly know what the true impact will be. There's rumors that you can build $1 trillion company with 5 people, right? And so because the technology is so robust and so strong, I think that you're going to need to have people who can have that curiosity and be able to ramp up, not only just learn things, but unlearn things. And so what was working before may not work in the future, but you have to retrain yourself not to think in the old way and really grasp what is going to be coming down around the corner. I don't think anybody truly knows the true impact that this is going to have, and we're trying it in different ways and seeing how we can augment what we're currently doing. But I think there's also going to be a transformation of how we truly engage with the technology and use it for multiple different areas. People are using it for different, almost like a robust search engine. But I think you can almost map out your whole entire day, your entire week by using this and just having it as a sounding board. Different conversations I've had with execs is that they bounce ideas. It's like having an executive assistant, a chief of staff, a thought partner all in one. And so using it in those ways is going to be incredibly powerful. And I don't think we're at that stage right now of having that being truly employed like it can be and will be.
I had a friend here this weekend and we were talking through that AI and how it will help my particular coaching business and also recruiting business. We both have been in recruiting for a long time. And you're right, you actually have to change your headset and relook at how you approach a problem, etc. And the ability to prompt and get that assistant or that almost a mini-me expert, right, to do what you want them to do. You can actually lay out a process and a series of commands and they will pick it up and run with it. So an interesting question that I've been asking all the executives is, all right, so what is the challenge of that to the search business as you're seeing it? And how will that change? Where do you provide the value going forward if they can go out and do a lot of this automatically?
It's still a people business. Okay. And so you are still going to need to know who the right people are, because it'll map out different functional skill sets that align with a role that you're looking to fill. But is it the right personality match? And I know we've seen situations where you have the perfect team together from a functional standpoint, but they don't click and they don't share. There's the lack of trust or whatever it might be breaks down the fabric of that company. And then that's just, you may have the best product, but if you don't have the right chemistry in the team, it's going to fall apart. Quite frankly, it's too easy to apply to a job.
Right.
And so you're
Absolutely.
seeing just an overwhelming number of people applying for a job. There's tools that are automated to apply on your behalf with the cover letter and a resume that's tailored for that role. So everybody looks generic, everybody looks the same. And so internal recruiters are just overwhelmed with the sheer volume. And so my proposition and our proposition is that we can find the right people for you, not only from a functional standpoint, but from a chemistry standpoint and how it's going to work from a personality standpoint with your team. And that's where that differentiator comes. And that's where knowing the right people and having that ecosystem of people you can reach out to and who will respond on outreach, and you know them as a person and you know where they've been strong and where there's some gaps to their skill set so that they can fit in, or maybe not just even skill set, but personality, so that they can fit into the right organization at the right level. And that's, I think, going to be key.
Okay, and yeah, I think there's always going to be the human element and the ability to, the person that can use the AI properly, you still need the judgment on top and the strategy on top and the thinking on top. How will that affect candidates? You have candidates from several levels, or at least down to a certain level, and now there's going to be fewer, let's say fewer jobs. I think I look back to the 2009 era, and I think there's going to be a big change, and that when I was in recruiting, that really did alter my company a lot, and actually we had trouble making permanent placements. So if there's fewer openings or fewer people being hired, there's going to be more people out on the market. And then what is the solution for the candidate side of the world when you're trying to help them? Or even if you can't place them, what kind of advice do you try to give them?
Yeah, I'm just saying, and I think this has been true all along. Unfortunately, it's going to go back to who you know, not necessarily what you know, because it's going to be the connections, your network, your ability to build those relationships, and having people refer you into roles is going to be key. And so that's where you never want to burn a bridge. You want to make sure that you leave every organization in a better state than you found it, so that you can go back and reach to those people that you worked with and those people that are part of your network to make those connections so you can find those jobs that, yeah, I have a feeling that there is going to be fewer jobs and there's going to be more people looking for it. And especially, and I think technology is going to be the canary in the coal mine in this regard, so that you're going to see if there's, and there have been major cuts across large players in the space, is that going to be a wave that's going to continue and work its way through middle-sized companies and small-sized companies? Because I think there's going to be challenges in trying to find as many roles as there are people that can fill them, and it's going to get competitive. So you will have 3 good candidates for every one role that's open, perhaps, and then it's going to be, how do you differentiate yourself as a candidate from the other 2 if it comes down to the final 3?
So everybody's going to have this problem if you look at it. You have the companies trying to differentiate themselves, but the recruiters and you searching for opportunities have to differentiate yourself. And then the candidates probably have the bigger problem of, how do you not look alike from everybody else? AI does have a little bit of a problem in the sense that the resumes look alike, but they actually look alike when they manually wrote them also. So it's not a big change. It's just a different look-alike. They're better English in them, and et cetera.
Better English, and the keywords are more aligned. So
yeah. And LinkedIn will say, oh, you want to line your resume up, and everybody lines it up, so everybody looks alike anyhow. So there's still no differentiation. Okay, cool. So how does this impact the business that you're in? Do you think you'll have fewer openings, or you think you'll have revenue impacts, or what do you feel?
I have a feeling that yes, it will impact, and I think what we're trying to do and what I think we've done over the years very well is finding clients who we partner with very well, and then we end up being their go-to executive team whenever there's a hiring need. And so, yes, we may start off as a chief product officer, VP of product management, but then we end up taking on a VP of engineering, VP of marketing, a VP of operations, or CEO search. So, most of our clients, we've done multiple roles with them. And that's how we're going to have to continue doing this, as being their go-to partner whenever there's a need at that level that they have. And so it's been more, I think, being flexible about where we can work from a technology standpoint. Recently, we've been primarily focused on software companies, but recently we've started working in more of a energy technology company, which has been a new industry to get into. It's been fascinating to learn more about that industry, but having that kind of flexibility to ramp up in new verticals has been key as well. But one of my partners has also been working deep with a drone company. And so it's been expanding our technical landscape and being able to find the right people in those environments too.
It goes back to your comment that it's who you know a little bit. It's the connection somehow. It's not like you have to be their best friend or anything, but someone has to introduce you. Yeah. And so you can be a conduit to introduce people.
And that's been a lot of what we do. Clients become candidates, become clients. And part of our job is being that conduit between different connection points. And then hopefully by doing that, we're paying it forward, and that they'll think of us when they have some hiring needs.
Yeah, that's what I used to do. I like that also is you're not going to be able to help every person that comes to you in terms of a placement, but you can help a lot of people in terms of introductions or ideas. And like you said, you're planting seeds for future opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. Okay, so from that point of view, I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging, and relationships are going to be the key. What about just generally for people that are looking for a search firm, or they're trying to figure out there's 50 of... So at that point in time, is there anything special, extra that you add to them to help them, A, with their career, or B, get into the game with you, etc.?
I think because we've been doing this for as long as we have, I think our services don't just say, it's not transactional and just saying, hey, here are the only things that we're doing. It's also coaching and helping set them up and asking questions about how to think about different scenarios, what they should be considering. Look at other companies that are tangential to this, that are data focused, that aren't just with a marketing bent, but with a broader lens. And so it's like crafting a go-to-market message for him in his positioning of who he is and what he's done. I don't want to say career coaching because that gets into what you do, but there is that part where we help them in positioning from what our clients would be looking for, and then helping them to expand some of their lens and maybe some companies that they hadn't considered, and get that on their radar and see how we can make some introductions potentially with those other companies that they may not have considered.
The key area that is going to be a challenge for everyone, like to rethink how the job market is and then how they can fit it. And there are transferable skills and transferable capabilities that just because you haven't done them doesn't mean you can't do them. The combination of people think, and I think resumes severely limit people into only what they've done. It does not talk about what they're capable of doing. It doesn't talk about what they want to do. And it doesn't talk about what they know even. So by combining some of those things, that could certainly make them more marketable and be able to handle these transitions. Because I think that's going to be a key for candidates. And I think even recruiting companies may have to shift industries like you're trying to do and get to other industries.
I also use different anecdotes and different stories of different scenarios that we've come across or we know of things that have happened. And one story I was telling this gentleman, I said, don't just wait for a job to get posted. Target companies that you think are cool companies. Look at what that landscape looks like from an executive standpoint, and have them on a radar for you so that when there's a product release, when there's a competitive change to one of their competitors, that you can reach out to them and just say, hey, you know what, I saw that this happened, and if you have a experience in that space, volunteer some information, volunteer some knowledge that you have, and see where that goes. I had a candidate that I was working with. He was fantastic, and I was excited to get him through our process. And all of a sudden he pinged me one day and he goes, hey, Chris, I'm going to have to pull myself from the process. And I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. But I was excited for him, but I was like, wow, that's tough on us. But congratulations, where are you going? And he mentioned the company. And I said, I didn't know that they had that position open. It was like a VP of engineering for a public company. And I said, I didn't realize that role was open. And he goes, it wasn't, but they were launching a product in a similar space that we had just launched a product in. So I pinged the CEO and told him, hey, this is what we experienced. You guys may want to think about X, Y, and Z. And he goes, the CEO responded back, put me in touch with one of their product people, and all of a sudden we started talking. And then they said, hey, you know what, we weren't thinking of opening this role for another 9 months, but would you be interested in considering this? And so he went through the process, and it got me to thinking that having that kind of knowledge that you're willing to share just demonstrated his expertise and his go-gettiveness. But then from a company standpoint, it saved them on a search fee. It saved them time on trying to find the right person. And they were able to have a much more collaborative conversation. It wasn't necessarily an interviewee. It was a collaboration type of a conversation, which then allowed them to make much more of a rational decision around each other. And he's still there. And this is...
Wouldn't that same strategy work? I did this when I was running my company. Wouldn't that same strategy work for recruiters and executive recruiters also?
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to get in before they give out the search.
Exactly.
And you want to help them put together the search. So you have to be ahead of the curve on some of that. I think that's right. And I think most companies at this point, I would think they're starting to get a little bit frustrated by putting the ads out. Because when there's 300 to 500 people, no one looks at all of them. They're going to look at the 20 of them by some random search, and then they're going to play with those 20. What's your thoughts on that?
I'll give an example. I was talking to a person over at Amazon, and I said he was looking for a developer, so a more junior level person. And he said, yeah, I've got to post this on our careers page, but I don't look at any of those candidates coming through there. I get enough referrals through my network that I'll just look at the referrals. And if I get 20 referrals, I'll be able to ask questions of the person that referred me to that candidate. And I'll ask them, can they ramp up on this? Where's their gaps? Blah, blah, blah. He goes, it's much more effective, efficient to just go through my network than it is to look at any kind of postings. Yes, it's a black hole, and there's a reason for that. It's just a bunch of noise.
Yeah, and hence the frustration that you'll see in the postings in the marketplace.
Without a doubt.
And every time someone comes to me, they've applied to 100 places and got nothing back.
Yeah.
Good. You also brought up one problem that I remember specifically. How will young people get experience when the entry-level market is going to be difficult?
This is a question that's so relevant for me right now because I have a son that's graduating from college in June. And there was a seminar that I went to, and it had the Allen Institute of AI, the CTO of the Allen Institute. They had the head of AI from the University of Washington, and then they had a consultant up there talking. And I went and I asked, they were talking about how great AI is going to be. And I said, okay, this is all good, but what about the people that are coming into the workforce now? We're able to see where AI has gaps. We're able to see where there's hallucinations because we have that knowledge. But if you don't have that knowledge, you're just going to take that answer as gospel and say that's right. So where does someone ramp up and learn how to get knowledgeable about the craft, be it accounting or copywriting, whatever it is? And I'm like, if all these jobs are going away at the entry level because of AI, where's someone going to learn?
Yeah.
And they were like,
very interesting question.
And so I'm telling my son, go have a wide prism, talk to as many people as you can, and don't rule out anything. And then if you can, make sure that you are in an in-office environment so you can build a network.
Yes.
Because that is where you never know where 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that person will remember you or you'll remember them, and it'll be a good connection. So make sure that you do a good job. Make sure you stand out from your peers, but make sure that you're having not only just the people in your function, but other people within your company cross-functionally that you're building those relationships with. And it's just, yeah, it's incredible. When I was at a company where Avenue A ended up, we changed it to Quantive. Microsoft ultimately acquired it for $6 billion. It was the biggest acquisition that Microsoft did at the time. Anyway, as we were growing, I think I was employee 15 and we were growing fast. But at the end of the day, we would end up getting done and we'd play a game called Dune. And Dune was one of the first video games, and it was like a first shooter, blah, blah, blah. And so all of us would put on our headsets and we'd just play this game. And I'm single. I didn't have to go home right away, but I'm playing. And so all of a sudden I had a question around HTML versus Java versus these other technologies. I'm new to the industry, so I was not understanding all this technology. So I went down and talked to Derek. And Derek, because I'd gotten killed by him so many times, he had sympathy perhaps on me, and he was sat down and just walked through technology. And he gave me a crash course in what all those technical capabilities were, what the limitations were. And I was thinking, that was great because I was able to do that then. If someone was just doing Zoom and they would have to schedule a time with this person from IT who they didn't know, that wouldn't work. They wouldn't want to do that.
That's right.
And so I was able to walk down to his cube and just have a good conversation. We did this on an ongoing basis. And for me, it was eye-opening. So that's how do you duplicate that now in this environment? And that's what I'm trying to figure out for early stage career people.
I've seen several webinars lately. One was, I guess he was a staffing industry trainer or so, and he was talking for a half hour about the importance of the personal relationship. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about that you also have to be the master or the user of the tools. And he was talking about this for a half hour with an AI program. And he's sitting there talking to it, and he says, now listen, I want you to ignore what the web is saying. I want you to ignore what all the prevailing opinions are there. I want you to do creative thinking and give me new ideas that have never happened. And the AI would come back with that. And it was unbelievable. I said, geez, that's just amazing. And so he forced the AI to get out of its pre-existing opinions and pre-existing environment. I think the same challenges is going to be for candidates, for clients in hiring, and for recruiting companies if they're going to survive through this period of time that we're going to go through for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
I think this goes back to the network, right? And having curiosity. And I think the people that have that openness, personality that is wanting personal interaction, those kind of people are going to, I think, do fine. It's the people that have to force this, that are more introverted, that's going to be a bit more of a challenge because the information is accessible. I think the differentiator for people is going to be how do you communicate that information effectively to a team, to customers, to clients. It's going to be that person that can take whatever information they're using or generating and being the visionary, being the cheerleader, being the advocate for getting people rallied around an idea to follow. And that's going to be the people that I think are going to be most successful is the people that can communicate best.
I agree with you 100%, 100%. But actually, that's always been the key, and you know that from interviewing with executives, right? The most qualified executive doesn't always get the job. It's the person that they think fits into the group, and usually that's because the communications and the linkage and the relationship comes out, right? Because you can't have a elephant in the china closet there that messes everything up.
Right.
The other thing that I've talked to a lot about, and this is very important, and I think we can end with this note. I think the biggest thing that people are going to have to do is learn to be adaptable and to be open to changing their past thinking and their behaviors. And if they have to do that to really compete, I think, in this future world. And so the people tend to get a little narrow-minded on certain things. This is the way I've always done it. This is how it should be. This is this. That's not necessarily true. That is true that it's always been that way. For up until 1492, the Earth was flat, and everybody would tell you that. And then all of a sudden it got round overnight, and then etc. And oh, really? And then they found out it actually was moving. No, it's not moving. All these were prevailing opinions. It doesn't mean they're true. So exactly. The real smart advice I give to people, and I know from our conversations this is what you're doing, you give them advice on how to adapt and how to change to the new realities that we're going to have to face.
Like we were saying, it's not only learning new things, but it's unlearning. And I think that's where the difficulty is going to be, as more executives have been successful because oftentimes they've used a similar playbook.
Yeah.
And so now, how do you tear up that playbook and use a new form and have the confidence that new form will be the right way to go? And so there's going to be some rough waters for some people, especially the ones that have been successful, if they've used a similar structure, similar mindset, similar thinking to be successful in these different environments. And how do you now adjust and bring in new ideas and new thinking to this? I think that's going to be a challenge. Younger people are more adaptable because they're not so set in their ways. It's going to be the more senior people, but I think they're the ones that also have more of an impact. So it's going to be a rub because they don't want to make the wrong mistake because it's going to impact that many more people. But they also need to think about things in a new way. So how do you make that adjustment and change? That's challenging.
Everybody's going to face challenges, and we all need to revisit what was may not be what should be at this point. And that'll be those that can get through these transitions. Well, why don't you, for our audience, thank you for your time today. It's been great. And why don't you give them a little bit of how they can reach you and how they can look up your firm, etc., and you can help them out if it's very appropriate.
Sure. Our website is it's Laureal-Group, so LAUREL-group.com. I'm at chris@Laureal-group.com is my email address. I'm on LinkedIn at Chris Berta. And Howard, thank you very much for having me on board. This has been fun.
I've enjoyed all our conversations, and we'll try to do some more in the future. And thank everybody for listening. And I'm Howard Caddy, Career Oyster. Take care and good luck in the transition.